It's Thursday, April 24. In the headlines, lawmakers are reviewing the Protected Disclosures Act. The Parnassus Agro Park in Clarendon has been commissioned into service. In business news, new bill payment service on offer. Regionally, a follow-up story from Belize. New security measures at the municipal airstrip following airjack scare. And in sports, Jamaica to defend relay and individual titles at the 129th Penn Relays. This is the news on PBC Jamaica. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. Lawmakers are reviewing the Protected Disclosures Act, and they're considering a new proposal that would allow employees to report misconduct through intermediaries, such as pastors, union leaders, and other trusted individuals who would ensure their identities are kept confidential. During a recent meeting, a joint select committee of Parliament tasked with reviewing the legislation discussed the idea of employees disclosing sensitive information to these intermediaries, who would then forward the information to the relevant authorities or designated persons, as outlined in the Protected Disclosures Act.
In my view, I would put a member of a trade union who may be representing the workers there. Justice of the peace, possibly. A minister of religion? A minister of religion, just so that it is not restricted only to a lawyer.
But the truth of the matter, though, I get the impression from the act is that whoever you disclose it to is protected. Right?
Maybe the only difference is that 11 is speaking to who you disclose to, in this case, the attorney.
Yeah.
I believe, though, 17 now speaks to the occupational detriment, which is more after the fact, not a protection before, but after the fact. What I hear Member Robinson to be suggesting is that expand somewhere within the provisions, could expand to a medium in which the worker or the employee can report these matters to. Whether within the organization where they have some confidence to do so, or externally.
The primary goal of the Protected Disclosures Act is to encourage and protect employees who report improper conduct, ensuring that disclosures made in the public interest are handled with confidentiality and without fear of retaliation. More than 60 farmers have been approved to operate within the Parnassus Agro Park in Clarendon. The area, which falls under the Southern Plains Agricultural Development Project, is now complete. The park was officially commissioned into service on Wednesday. The event marked a significant milestone for those farmers who received their leases for their plots. Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries, Floyd Green, pointed out that this is happening in April, the month recognized as Farmers' Month.
So they will have the tenureship they need to invest and drive their own wealth creation.
He says the ministry is transforming these former sugar lands into productive investment-ready zones.
Through the National Irrigation Commission, we have drilled and developed 3 new replacement wells, which will collectively supply 9.6 million gallons of water every day to meet the crop irrigation needs of the park. But we never just did the wells. In fact, we've installed 13.6 kilometers of pipeline to bring the water from the wells to the farm. We have installed the pumps, and we have also put in pump houses, fire suppression systems, state-of-the-art modern equipment, and rehabilitated and constructed 12 kilometers of road in the agro park so that you can get to your farms.
He says resident farmers will not be displaced.
We have reserved of the 700 acres, at least half of it, to ensure that the farmers who are there, along with youth, women, and persons with disabilities, they will have priority access to these lands.
Minister Green says the new irrigation system at the Parnassus Agro Park in Clarendon was developed with funds from the United Kingdom.
This is part of our Southern Plains Agricultural Development Project, which, as you heard, comes by way of the UK Caribbean Investment Infrastructure Fund to the tune of £17 million.
President of the Jamaica Teachers Association, Dr. Mark Smith, is once again urging the government to make major investments in the country's education sector. Let's hear more about his proposal from Danita Rodney.
Dr. Smith made the call during the opening of the JTA's annual conference at Ocean Coral Spring in Trelawney on Tuesday.
We need to make a historic investment in education to catapult our education system into the future, thus safeguarding our collective economic fortunes. This should be our single greatest obsession as a people. That is what has prompted us to, of course, launch our Go Public Fund education campaign. We're a bit concerned, Minister, that the Mona School of Business, which indicated it would cost approximately $280 billion over 8 years to fund the Patterson Report recommendations, that we have only accounted for $48 billion of that in the consolidated fund. And so we are concerned that if we're going to have this transformation, we are all on board. I can tell you my army of teachers are ready, but we have to have the tools to do the job.
Dr. Smith once again stressed the need for more competitive salaries for teachers, comparing their earnings to those in other professions across Jamaica.
If we're serious about transforming this country, as I bring the curtains down on my remarks, into a knowledge-based economy, we must address the issues impacting teacher remuneration, conditions of service. This requires providing highly competitive salaries when compared to other professions, thus retaining our smartest, our brightest, and most committed. Creating a remuneration package that serves to stem the exodus of teachers while serving to attract a new generation of highly infused Jamaicans. As my colleague from Germany once said to me, in Germany, teaching is a highly sought-after profession. I look forward to the day when I can say the same about Jamaica.
The JTA president continued saying technology is set to transform the role of teachers in the classroom.
And so we're now looking at teachers and what it means is going to change your role in the classroom, more of a facilitator, because as Minister rightfully said, these kids know how to use it, whether or not you do. And so we now must start to pivot towards utilizing this technology to support learning.
Time now for the business report with Denise Williams.
Welcome to today's business report. I'm Denise Williams, here to bring you the stories shaping the financial world and guiding your journey to smarter business decisions. Let's dive into the top headlines. Supreme Ventures Fintech Limited, the fintech arm of Supreme Ventures Limited, will now offer bill payment services. Evolve Bill Pay will be available at select Supreme Ventures retail locations. Delroy Anderson, Chief Innovation Officer for Supreme Ventures Fintech, stated, with Evolve Bill Pay, we're taking financial services to the people, making everyday transactions faster, easier, and more convenient. This is just the beginning of our journey to transform how Jamaicans interact with financial technology. For more information on Evolve Bill Pay and participating locations, visit evolveja.com. The Bank of Jamaica says on April 29 it will be borrowing another $5 billion Jamaican dollars for almost 15 years to help fund the country's budget. Investors who are willing to lend will receive a benchmark investment note paying an interest rate of 8.25% per annum. The interest on the investment, which will also be paid every 6 months, will be taxable at 25% per annum, while the smallest amount which may be purchased is 1,000 Jamaican dollars. Several notable companies have declared intention to pay dividends to shareholders. First, Seprod Limited has advised that the Board of Directors at a meeting scheduled for April 30, 2025 will consider a dividend payment to shareholders of the company. Then Supreme Ventures Limited has advised that the Board of Directors at a meeting scheduled for April 30, 2025 will consider an interim dividend payment to shareholders of the company. Next, Mayberry Group Limited has advised that the Board of Directors at a meeting scheduled for April 23, 2025 will consider a dividend payment to shareholders of the company. Also, Omni Industries Limited has advised that the Board of Directors at a meeting scheduled for May 2, 2025 will consider a dividend payment to ordinary shareholders of the company. For the trading period ending April 24, 2025, these were the most actively traded stocks. Toll road operator Trans-Jamaican Highway Limited Jamaican dollar shares with 3,540,755 units traded, representing 23.21% of market sales volume. Toll road operator Trans-Jamaica Highway Limited US dollar shares with 2,841,330 units traded, representing 18.62% of market sales volume. Alternative energy provider Wigton Energy Limited with 1,084,173 units traded, representing 7.11% of market sales volume. We now shift our focus to the Forex market rate set by the Bank of Jamaica. On April 23, 2025, the Bank of Jamaica reported US $66.59 million purchased and US $67.47 million sold by Forex traders. Forex traders earned $1.58 per dollar, selling the US at $159.04 and buying the US at $157.46. The Canadian dollar netted Forex traders $2.07 per transaction, with selling at $115.11 and buying at $113.04. The British pound yielded Forex traders 85 cents in profits, with selling at $210.44 and buying at $209.59. For our credit report tip of the day, credit invisibility is more than just a financial inconvenience. It's a hidden barrier to building wealth. When credit history is missing or too limited to generate a score, access to loans, housing, business funding, and even job opportunities become restricted. This status of credit invisibility impacts everyday decisions and long-term financial planning, often forcing individuals to rely solely on cash, missing out on leverage opportunities, and maybe even paying more for essential services. Understanding the consequences of being credit invisible is the first step. The next step is identifying clear, actionable strategies that move you from invisible to influential in the credit world. Now, if you're building something from nothing and moving from financial recovery to financial resilience, managing your finances shouldn't feel like decoding a secret language. But for many professional women over the age of 45, that's exactly what it feels like. The spreadsheets, the jargon, the pressure to earn more while already juggling so much. It can leave you stuck in a cycle of doubt. Add to that the disappointment of following online experts who overpromise and underdeliver. And it's no wonder you're feeling frustrated. But here's the truth. Your age, your experiences, and your instincts are assets. You don't need a guru. You need a grounded game plan and a guide who respects where you've been and where you're ready to go. So here are some ideas. First, track your cash flow weekly, not just monthly. And then next, watch your habits, not just your totals. So are you spending when you're stressed? Is retail therapy your way to cope with issues? Your budget will tell you. Then start with just one financial goal, not 5, just one. So for example, you could say you're gonna pay off your credit card by December. And that wraps up today's business report. I'm Denise Williams, reminding you that every financial decision is a step toward your future. Until next time, stay focused, stay informed, and keep striving for success. See you soon.
In regional news, Belize's municipal airstrips have ramped up security after Thursday's tropic air hijacking scare. Thankfully, all passengers escaped unharmed, but the incident could have been tragic if the hijacker had been armed with deadlier weapons. News 5's Brittany Gordon caught up with a passenger at the Sir Barry Bowen Municipal Airstrip to get the scoop on the new safety protocols.
It's been nearly a week since the hijacking of a Tropic Air flight in Belizean skies. In response, the Belize Airport Authority has implemented new security measures. Lydia de los Santos, a passenger flying to Placencia, shares her thoughts on the changes.
Can you talk a little bit about the security measures that you have seen here at this airport in comparison to some of the other security measures that you've had on other planes?
I think it's kind of the same, just in a smaller scale, because they still have the metal detectors. Your bag has to get checked.
She explains that the new procedures are not complex and don't take much time.
Yeah, we got our boarding passes. We had to show our passports, just like in a big airport. And they checked our bags. And when we got to this particular one, and they gave us our boarding pass, yeah.
How many bags are you guys traveling with?
2.
And are you allowed to have a purse or?
There's like 2 luggage and a carry-on.
So you are allowed to keep your carry-on?
Yes.
Passengers can still bring a personal item, but now they must go through a metal detector scan.
They did the metal detector and they checked I don't know if they went in the bag, but they checked the bag. Okay. So I don't know if they went in it.
De Los Santos is traveling with caution, but feels reassured by the new security measures.
And do you feel that this is sufficient enough for your safety?
I mean, are we ever really safe? You know, I live on a prayer. So, I mean, I'm satisfied.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's comparable to other airports, maybe just on a smaller scale?
Smaller scale, yeah.
Okay. And is there any sort of maybe hesitation that you have given the recent news of what happened? Or do you feel that it's been taken care of?
I did see the news. My sister sent it to me right the day before I'm coming. So I'm like, again, I trust Jesus. I do everything afraid because in this world, nothing is really safe anymore. But I trust that the Lord's going to keep me safe. So that's it.
Brittany Gordon for News 5.
In Trinidad and Tobago, the People's National Movement is warning voters to beware of campaign promises that sound too good to be true. At a political meeting, Prime Minister Stuart Young and senior party members cautioned that some electoral pledges could cost the country billions and trigger serious economic fallout.
Prime Minister Stuart Young at the PNM public meeting in St. Joseph on April 22 quoted independent voices who are concerned about impractical electoral promises, referencing independent sources such as business journalist Anthony Wilson's article, "Can TNT Afford Kamala's Promises?"
And listen to what he warns us about. The cost of funding 7 of the main promises or commitments made by Kamala Prasad Bissessa could be more than $18 billion in additional expenditure.
Minister of Health and candidate for Arangoe St. Joseph, Terence Deyalsing, reminded citizens not to repeat history.
In 1986, in the run-up to that election, a coalition called the NAR promised you the earth, the moon, and the stars. But when the NAR found out they could not fund their promises, they had to go to something called the International Monetary Fund, or the IMF. What was the result of that? Homes were lost. Hopes and dreams were shattered.
Referring to the revenue earned from the PNM's unprecedented restructuring of Atlantic LNG, amongst other revenue-boosting successes in their 9-year tenure.
So that is $38 billion. That is what paid for GATE. That is what paid for PTSC. That is what pays for electricity to be subsidized. That is the reality. That is why I can stand here tonight and I can ask Trinidad and Tobago, measure the PNM government on its track record, how we have managed this country in difficult times.
Prime Minister Stuart Young recommended that citizens put faith in a government's actual track record. Prime Minister Young offered that just as short-term gains can lead to long-term losses when managing a family budget, the same applies for decisions impacting the citizenry and economy. Stacia Yoward, TTT News.
A growing number of Barbadians are worried about children getting caught up in crime. That's one of the key findings of a new regional study by the Caribbean Development Research Services, commissioned by UNICEF. The survey reveals that nearly 3/4 of Barbadians believe young people need help and protection. But not everyone agrees. Some say the young are beyond saving, and others believe jail is the answer. Cadre's director, Corey Sandiford, shared the figures during a UNICEF press conference on violence against children.
But a statistically similar number believe that society at large has failed these young people and is responsible. That's 31%. The smallest group suggests that parents are responsible. 23% still hold parents responsible, which is a substantial quantity. Next slide. This is the last slide that we will have on this topic. Specialized child-friendly procedures being necessary. We asked respondents whether they thought that specialized child-friendly procedures are necessary to address this issue of children who come into conflict with the law. And the response generally conveys the impression that people are highly supportive. Over on the left-hand side, over half of the respondents at the regional level, people are highly supportive of child-friendly procedures, which are said to be absolutely necessary by more than half of respondents, with 1/4 saying that perhaps these procedures could be necessary. The four most popular reasons in 2024 that people gave for not reporting cases of child sexual abuse were the fear of negative consequences of reporting, and that is where you fear that the person could wield some influence towards you, that you could be victimized in some way if the person is an important person, the abuser. The belief that the process would take too long, so it would get lost away in the court system and so on, and it would not be worth the family's time, effort, and basically the possibility of having the family's name dragged through the mud. The embarrassment of stepping forward, and the belief that the relevant authorities would not act. We have a chart representing where respondents were asked if they believe there was a major problem with children being stalked in their country. Similar quantities of people, approximately 1/3 in each case, considered the problem to be minor or were unsure about their views. 17% saw it as a major problem, and then as 30% saw it as a minor problem. Combining the 17% who saw it as a major problem with the 30% who saw it as a minor problem, almost half of the respondents regionally consider stalking to be a problem in their country.
In sports, we begin with athletics. Jamaican high school boys will begin their defense of 3 championships of America's relay titles and 4 individual event titles today as the 129th staging of the Penn Relays Carnival kicks off in Frank Field in Philadelphia. A strong contingent of Jamaican teams comprising 50 high schools and 5 colleges will compete in the 3-day championships, joined by 10 high schools from the Eastern Caribbean, as well as teams from Great Britain and South Africa. For the second time since the Penn Relays resumed after the COVID-19 pandemic, The high school boys will compete first, with their events scheduled for Thursday and Friday. The girls' competition will begin on Friday, with their relay finals set for Saturday's closing day of the event. We pivot to boxing. Newly elected president of the Pan American Boxing Confederation, Elise Signoli, will arrive in Jamaica this Friday, April 25, for an official 5-day visit, which will run through Tuesday, April 29. Signoli's visit is set to highlight Jamaica's growing prominence in the sport of boxing. During her stay, she will attend the Gloves for Guns Futures program on Saturday, April 26, at the Stanley Couch Gym. The event, which marks the end-of-month show for the program, will feature young boxers from Jamaica, the Cayman Islands, and the United Kingdom, showcasing the region's emerging talent. President of the Jamaica Boxing Association, Stephen Bomber-Jones, says her visit and its significance for the future of boxing in Jamaica is positive. He's quoted saying, "Her visit is not only a vote of confidence in what we are building here, but a clear signal that Jamaica is becoming the heartbeat of Caribbean boxing." End quote. And that's the news on PBCJ. You can follow us on our social media platforms at PBC Jamaica. Thanks for watching.